demand those very things, Efren, that you're saying, because I agree wholeheartedly. We want this process to be driven by our residents, and we want to incorporate, what the residents are asking for in this document, and the community input subcommittee forms that basis for all of the other subcommittees. You are absolutely right, man. I appreciate your passion. You were the first person on the list. I know you didn't see the list, but when we were forming them, you were the first name up there, and I think both Sandra and I agree that you were one of the most vital people in that committee because of your passion for ensuring that the voice of the residents are always heard and not forgotten. So appreciate your thoughts, man. Gloria Hernandez.
Is there a budget for the committee?
I'm sorry. Is there a what?
A budget is, are they going to be able to use like money to reach out? Maybe I know they'll have access to Zoom, but not everybody has access to Zoom. The community, that is.
Right. Well, we'll do what we can, but yes, I mean, if we need, there is a opportunity, and I'm gonna kind of get to that a little bit. But you asked a perfect question. I think the time's appropriate. So we are expecting the subcommittees to, after you all meet, to really come up with a thoughtful plan, strategy about the resources that you think you may need, and let us go about getting those for you. But I don't want to get too far ahead of the subcommittees and saying what you're going to request and what you're going to need. I really think that first meeting that you all have, it's a couple of things we want you all to do. One of those things is to obviously get a chair, but you also see develop and kind of present a work plan. In that work plan, we want to know what resources you think you may need. And to your point, Gloria, we want to make ourselves accessible as we can to our residents. And so when that subcommittee gets together, I have no doubt, I feel strongly that the people that are on that committee will be thinking about how residents can gain access to this process, and make sure that we have the appropriate recommendations to see fit to do it. But great question. So next, we'll talk about the police training and policy subcommittee. Um, so that subcommittee is really the kind of the heart of the reformation that the council has asked us to do, because it probably, I suspect that committee will have the most direct, hands-on uh, set of recommendations for interaction directly with the police department. So this won't be as, like community development. We're going to ask you all to think really broad, and we're going to ask you guys to think really big, and we're going to kind of redefine public safety. This is going to be working in the confines of what public safety already are, but really trying to take some of the best practices that this nation offers and incorporate them and infuse them into the Fresno Police Department. Once again, based off of the residents, based off of our input from our residents. So what we do know is uh, it's going to be important to translate what our residents are saying into workable policy. And this group, this particular subcommittee will have a very broad charge as far as the way it looks at policing in Fresno. There's going to be a real need to look at what's happening now and historically, and what our aspirations are for the future based off of the input we're receiving from our residents. So we're going to need to do both of those things in that subcommittee. I'm on that subcommittee, and that's why I said we. But we're really going to need to really do both of those things. And we know there are a number of um, really good models that exist, again, not just in America, but globally, that we can borrow from and look at and use as guides, to do this work. So we'll be doing that stuff, right? I think it's going to be fun and exciting, and that group is a group of, again, really good and diverse folks. In that subcommittee, I expect a good, robust discussion, as it should be. And I expect that we will find a whole lot of common ground. I happen to think that, believe it or not, we're a lot closer aligned than what people would think or suggest if you read the newspaper or social media. I think that everybody in this commission really wants what's good for Fresno. I feel strongly about that. So that subcommittee will be really digging into the policy and the practices of the Fresno Police Department, the tactics, and but also bringing to bear what we are noticing around this country and around this globe, and some of the best and highest uses in police practices, tactics, and policy. Gloria, is your hand still raised, or did I answer your first question? Okay,
No,
thanks.
you answered. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about that particular subcommittee?
Oliver, if I can interject for a moment real quick, we are streaming this on YouTube live right now for you as well. Just wanted to let you guys know that.
Great.
There's a link in the chat.
Thank you, Gavin. I think that's great. And to those of you that have access to social media and what have you, if you can let your contacts know that they can watch this meeting live on YouTube, I think that would be great if they didn't get a chance to register beforehand.
It's on the City of Fresno's YouTube channel if anybody's looking.
Okay. I didn't even know the City of Fresno has a YouTube channel. That's great. All right, so there we go. So it's streaming on, and thanks, Efren. I know that was because of your suggestion earlier, so appreciate you making that point. Gloria, your hands up again.
I thought I lowered it.
Oh, okay. I think I saw it go down, then I saw it come back up. So we'll okay, it's off now. Sorry about that. All right. So our last subcommittee that we have is police budget. And again, initially didn't know that we would have a special subcommittee for the police budget, but after listening to that first discussion, I realized there was an enormous amount of interest in how the police department spend, what current resources are allocated to it, where they're going, are they being used at the highest and best purposes right now? So I realized, I'm like, I think this commission needs to have the opportunity to make those explorations into the police department budget and figure out where we are, get the baseline, and then understand. And I'm hoping they make some recommendations for efficiencies should they exist. But I think more importantly is really the first part in understanding what actually is happening in the police budget. So I've already gotten some questions about that. And although I think I was answering a question for community development, or no, I'm sorry, community input for resources. That is a committee that I could suspect, potentially could need some resources as well. The good thing, we have some experts on staff that can really walk, I think, that subcommittee through what the intricacies of budgeting, not only the police budget, but some aspects of the city budget as well, and potentially other agencies' budgets that actually coordinate with the police department, whether inside of the city of Fresno or out. So that's pretty straightforward. Police budget is that's what we expect from that. I'm curious as to see what kind of recommendations honestly are going to come out of that. But I know that we needed to have it because I really listened to the discussion surrounding it. So pretty straightforward there. Do we have any additional comments on police budget? All right, great. So I wanted to now go we're an item item 2, where we actually talk about the timelines and expectations of the subcommittee. So Sandra and I think we developed this working piece together because we really felt like we ought to at least, again, our goal is not to be too prescriptive and too restraining. We really want to allow the subcommittees to have a lot of flexibility, to do some innovative work and thinking. That's the idea. But at the same time, we knew you needed at least some general thoughts and direction to go in to get started. We want you guys to be able to hit the ground running. You don't have a lot of time. So the very first thing we realized is we wanted to talk about the timelines for the subcommittee. So the commission, you all may remember that first meeting where I said I probably thought the commission would meet every other week, and I think most of the room had a conniption. The reason why initially I suggested that is because I had assumed that we would be in subcommittee work and thereby lessening the need for a general meeting every week, along with subcommittee meetings every week. A lot of us that are commissioners are very busy people. All of you are connected to this community in some way. And I didn't want to, it wasn't the idea to burden you with 2 meetings a week, with the police commission, the police commission on reform. So what we thought was, is to as we get the subcommittees, to allow the subcommittees to start running downhill, and do some work right away. So we're recommending that the subcommittees, when you all get a chance to meet with each other, that you choose a meeting date and time. However, because Monday at 5 o'clock did seem like a good time for most of the commissioners to attend, and I can imagine trying to work an additional day in the week could be problematic for folks. Sandra and I felt that we would reserve Mondays. So the general commission is not going to meet for the next 3 Mondays, to allow that day to be available for the commissioners should they want to meet. Okay, on Monday. Now, you may decide that you want to meet a different day. We don't have a problem with that. We're not telling you what day to meet, but we are telling you that the general commission will not meet for the next 3 Mondays. So we won't meet again until August 3rd. Okay, to allow the subcommittees to have at least 3 weeks worth of meetings. We want you guys to get some work going, to get some momentum, and we'll come back and meet again on August 3rd. And then that meeting, the idea is that we would have some actual reporting from the subcommittees. There should be enough within each subcommittee by that time to where there's something to report. There's something to talk about. There are legitimate updates that the subcommittees can provide to the entire commission, and hopefully have discussion around that. You will have subcommittee chairs, you'll have subcommittee members, other subcommittee members or the commissioners may have questions about the subcommittee work. Well, you have hopefully a body of work by that time to discuss it. There should be something to discuss after 3 weeks. And so we're going to give you guys a 3-week head start to allow you to meet as a subcommittee. We're going to take off another 3 weeks as a general commission. So it's not for the subcommittees to take off, but for the general commission to take off, to not have to meet again, holding those Mondays if you want to take advantage of that meeting day that's already set. And then we'll meet again on August 31st. Now, as a general commission. Now, the idea of that is by August 31st, we are hoping that you are ready to put forth some recommendations out of your subcommittees. We need you to be ready because, again, you know that the city council did not give us a long time to do this work. So if you all are able as subcommittees to give us recommendations, solid recommendations by August 31st, we then have about 2-3 weeks to begin to put together what we are hoping is a final draft, one that we will build together. And we will and then we as a commission will resume meeting weekly again until we get through our final document. So that's kind of how we set out the timeline and expectations for you all. So I'll go through that again. Sandra's going to send it out in an email if you didn't already. Did you already send that out in an email? No, not yet. Okay. So Sandra will recap this in an email to you all, but I'll just talk through it one more time, particularly for those folks that may be listening in the public so that they understand. The subcommittees are going to spend the next 3 weeks meeting. You all will decide your own meeting date and times. However, Mondays are available if you need them. Okay, because all of you have already reserved this day and time. We will resume a general commission meeting on August 3rd, giving the subcommittees 3 weeks of hopefully robust meetings and something to report back. We don't expect you to have any draft recommendations at that point, but we do expect that for some of your work to begin to take shape. So we should be able to see and feel and understand the direction that the subcommittees are going. You will meet again another 3 weeks in a row without a general commission meeting. And then we'll come back on August 31st and we will meet as a full commission. And we will expect that the subcommittees bring forth draft recommendations out of your committees that we will then begin to incorporate into a final document together. But we're going to need, but the work of the subcommittees is going to inform the work of the final document. Okay. So, John Liao, I see I have a question. I think you're still muted, John. You're muted.
Unmute.
There you go.
Thank you. Quick question. If you've already covered this, I apologize. Have you made reference to a previous a police advisory committee that existed some years ago? Were you a member of the police force at that point in time, or were you city council member? And have we studied, you know, were there recommendations made at that point in time, or is that just past history?
No, I was not a member of the of that committee. I think we may have people on the commission that may have been a member of that. I am not a member of that. I suspect that as background work, committees will review some of the recommendations that committee did. But I was not personally, no, John.
Well, I think that would be very beneficial for the subcommittee that I've been placed on. So thank you for that information.
You got it. Thank you. Okay. So I think we covered the initial, the timelines and the expectations for the subcommittee. So it sounds like you all have a working understanding of what the expectations are. Sandra's going to send out kind of a recap of that for you all to go over. Oh, Ashley.
Hi, folks. I have a question about this process. It doesn't completely make sense to me how we're supposed to develop a cohesive platform or set of recommendations that is not built, again, cohesively around the community input. So if there's a disjointed budget committee working, there's a community input committee, at what point are they informing one another formally to ensure that the work is happening in an integrated way? Because this sounds like it's going to duplicate a lot of work, and we're going to end up trying to piece together multiple incoherent proposals.
You know, that's a good point, and I actually forgot to mention the connector piece to that. So what we expect from the subcommittee chairs, so we expect the subcommittee chairs to meet every week, and that really is the connecting piece, Ashley. And thank you for bringing that up, because Sandra and I talked about how we don't have it be disjointed. We talked about how we wanted to make sense, and that's going to be the piece that connects it, are the subcommittee chairs. So weekly they have to meet and inform each other of the progress that they're making along that. You can step right over to the mic right over there. Yep.
Are you ready for my question?
Yes, I'm ready. Well, hold on one second. Ashley, did that answer your question? Or we wanted to have that was a connectivity in there, and I apologize for not mentioning that earlier.
I'm kind of sharing Ashley's concern about disjointed meetings, and that it's going to take some time for our groups, our subcommittees, to start working together. And I'm beginning to realize that everybody's bringing a different set of expertise into this, and I'm getting to realize that everybody else has a full-time job. That being said, this is really important, what we're doing here. I'm listening to public radio coming out of Bakersfield and how they're trying to do what we're doing here. And we have an example where we could set an example for other communities. I think we can look for best practices in policing worldwide and not just nationwide. And I think we can meet more than once a week, even with our jobs and our other obligations outside of here. We're talking about a 3-week gap without a primary committee meeting. And I defer to you guys for the management of this committee. But I don't know if I speak for everybody. I just speak for myself, that I'm coming to this ready to do more. And I want to do as much as we possibly can to fix this in the limited time that we have. That's I guess that's my question. I'm just worried about this disjointedness.
Yeah, and that was what I mentioned to Ashley. So, she asked the same question, and the answer to that is the subcommittee chairs are going to meet every week to keep that connectivity going. And I'll tell you that it's a lot to ask of full-time folks that have full-time jobs to meet twice a week already, in some pretty intense meetings. We want very much the attention spans to be there. We want very much the enthusiasm to be there. We don't want folks to get burnt out with meetings. We want the meetings to have substance. So I'm worried about us just as a general commission meeting when subcommittees don't have a lot to say just yet. There's not going to be a whole lot in the first, when if subcommittee meets this week. I don't suspect that by next week they're going to be able to, tell us everything they want to do. I do think that if you give them an opportunity to get a little momentum, it won't be without the information from the chairs of those committees. By the way, the chairs of those committees are going to be meeting with the other chairs, along with Sandra and I every week to make sure that there's an information exchange.
I see. I think I see what you're saying. So
Yeah.
The second meeting each week is going to be with the subcommittee
Exactly.
chairs.
Right.
Okay.
So that was, and that was the way that we wanted to create the connectivity through the process, because we debated that very same thing. I don't want to say that we debated it. I think we were on the same page. Is that we felt like that would be the most efficient way, an effective way of people's time, to be conscious of people that want to participate, but we didn't want to discourage folks that can't meet a couple of times a week. So we did think about that. Listen, and I'm going to tell you, Sandra and I have also pledged to be very flexible. If something doesn't work, we're going to change it. But we wanted to think about a way initially to where we could be mindful of the time commitment. We're already asking a lot, because the subcommittee meeting is just the beginning. There's going to be an enormous amount of reading and programming and whatnot that are going to need to occur individually with committee that we're expecting to occur with subcommittee members every week as well. Yeah, but to that point, if it doesn't work, I can tell you that one of the things Sandra and I said is we were going to remain flexible, and we're kind of building a plan as we fly, but we're trying to start with the best intentions. Right. Ashley, did your hand go back up?
Yes, my hand is back up. One just sort of comment because it's important. My name is spelled wrong. There's no I in the last name. Also, so I'm just really concerned that we're setting ourselves up for a lot of disorganization, and there's no shared learning. We have had no cohesive or strategic conversations around what any of this language means, or no shared learning around other models, no shared learning around effective strategies of reinvesting into communities. I just think that we're rushing to organize when truly the subcommittee that needs the most time right now to mobilize is the community input subcommittee. Like, to have an authentic amount of engagement, that committee needs an initial investment like cash flow and also time. And then I think it would behoove us to have some of that shared learning as a commission, in addition to having opportunities to synthesize that input from community as a full committee before we mobilize. Because otherwise, why would I spend time redesigning community, in my subcommittee, if I don't have any of the feedback from the community about how they want their resources reallocated and redesigned? It just seems duplicative and not in alignment with our shared goals.
Yeah, and I don't know any other way to necessarily answer that than I already have. We don't have a lot of time. We don't, and I wish I asked for more, but we don't have it. So, we're trying to connect the process by meeting every week with the subcommittee chairs. I don't necessarily think that's duplicative. I think that, the leadership and the subcommittees are going to have to do what they can to really communicate the continuity between the groups. But if like I said, if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. So, for now, this is what we're going to try. And we thought this would be the best way to start, at least to allow the subcommittees to get some work and get some things going. So any more comments or questions around that? Yeah, John.
Well, just along those lines, I think we're at the beginning stages, and certainly there are other models that we can consider. Again, rather than reinventing the wheel, but yet we are being innovative. And so I appreciate the opportunity to do that. And yes, I do agree with Ashley, the challenge is ahead of us. But as we start our committee work, we can certainly reach out back to you, our chair and our vice chair, with any suggestions, questions, concerns. We can learn from each other. So yeah, I'm anxious to find out who.
John, you jump back on mute, my friend.
Unmute. Am I unmuted?
You're live again.
Okay. Well, to finish that thought is that I'm looking forward to meeting and chatting with the other folks in my subcommittee, and then we'll take it one step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you. DeAngelique?
Hey, so I really quickly just wanted to ask if it's possible for us to reach out to the city council and ask them to consider an extension, just to kind of like we're asking you, and knowing that like you don't really have that authority, it's the authority of the city council, to consider COVID-19 and how Fresno County is on a watch list with the state, with the governor's office, and many other factors just surrounding COVID and the increased positive tests that we're receiving back. I think it would be important for us to consider reaching out to city council to see if they would be willing to give us more time. I'm not necessarily, recommending an indefinite time period, but just as they're arguing for a continuance of their budget, I also think that we should be considering a continuance resolution for this commission as well, because we don't have the ready access to the community. And I definitely don't think the city of Fresno wants to encourage us to get in front of people and encourage public gatherings at a large rate, especially in our current just climate health-wise.
DeAngelique, I wholeheartedly agree, and I argued for more time up front, like you mentioned. But in that vein, I don't have any problem. And I could talk to Sandra, and we could see about drafting a letter from the commission, of course, one that's supported by the commission, and asking if there's a potential for more time. Now, what I would say, you can go to the mic right there. What I would say is what we should do is see how the work product maybe starts coming along, and definitely reserve that right for us to ask for more time. I initially told the council that I thought we needed 6 months to do this work at a minimum. Sandra's always said we needed at least a year, and I don't disagree with that. So yeah, I've always been an advocate for more time for this work, because it is important work. And I could see if maybe after a couple of weeks we can maybe put something together and ask for a time request if we think we really need it. Yes.
Oliver, I know the council gave you 90 days. I'm curious if they have instructed you from their perspective how our work will interface when they come back to do a real budget, not this interim stay in place budget. In other words, we're all going to contribute a fair amount of time and input with some recommendations. But if our recommendations come into place 2 weeks after they pass the real budget, I'm just curious how that interfaces.
No, that's a great question. And let me say it this way. So no, they haven't told me that just yet. But I will also say that we should be thinking about this work beyond this year's budget. And it really should be something that we're aspiring for the next several budgets. We should really be wanting to institutionalize this work as a part of the city framework, as a part of the police department work, as part of the community's work. So, hopefully, if we're successful in what we recommend, even if we don't necessarily make this year's budget, we definitely can have things in place for the following year. But I think it's a great question. My Tao.
Can you just clarify the process again between what happens with the subcommittee meeting and then having a chair and then the chair's meeting? I think that was really fast and I must have missed something or some clarification around that, please. Thank you.
No problem at all. That's a great question. I just want to make sure. So one of the things that, and if you have your agenda in front of you, one of the things that we want the subcommittees to do is to elect the chair or select the chair, like however they decide to do it, I'm fine with. But someone that is responsible for kind of facilitating that group and moving it down the path. Each of the subcommittees, all 4 of them, will have their own chair. Those chairs will meet weekly. So whatever there's going to be a weekly meeting that we're going to recommend for all of the subcommittees. The subcommittee chairs will then meet with each other along with Sandra and I every week to really kind of close that continuity gap as much as we can. And we're going to see how it works. We're theorizing that maybe this is a way to do it. But that's what you should expect, Mai, is that the subcommittee chairs meeting every week. Sandra and I are recommending Fridays of every week. And that way, the ideas for the subcommittee, hopefully they would have met earlier that week. They will have things to bring to the rest of the subcommittee chairs and informing the subcommittees of the work that they're doing, so that there is some continuity between the work product. So that's the initial idea. Did I clear it up or?
Yeah, so right now it's just a facilitation expectation and then an information sharing expectation. So there isn't another layer of decision making or anything at that subcommittee chairs meeting. I'm just, because I think what I'm a little bit hesitant on is just that if we add another layer of bureaucracy into the process, and then also what's the turnaround from the chairs meeting. So are those meetings going to have note taking? Or are those notes going to be sent back to the subcommittee? I'm just wondering what the main purpose is, and is that the right process for this? Yeah.
Yeah. So we hope the subcommittees take notes in their meetings, like we take notes in this meeting. We hope that.
Sorry, clarification for the chairs subcommittee meetings. So the 4 of them meeting with the both of you.
Well, are you saying are the chairs going to take notes?
So you're saying that meeting is information sharing. So assuming they have notes from their subcommittees, right?
Oh,
what
right.
I'm asking for is, how is the discussion and the transparency from the 4 chairs and the 2, yourself chair and the vice chair of the overall commission? How are those discussions going to be brought back to the subcommittees and the larger commission?
Yeah, exactly like that. So the idea is that the subcommittee chairs meet and they'll meet with Sandra and I, and then they report back to their committees, their subcommittees, on what happened. So we're expecting them to report back and to obviously, bring back reports from all of the other subcommittees, so that the subcommittee process doesn't leave people behind. So yeah, that's the idea. And that was why we were hopeful. That's why we're recommending that the subcommittee select the chair, so that somebody's responsible for the coordination of that effort. Gloria Hernandez.
Mariah and I submitted a request for information. And so if we are meeting on a weekly basis, are we going to have access to that information ASAP, as they will be decision-making type of resource?
I probably didn't understand the last part, Gloria. Can you repeat it?
Well, we're going to need that information in order to develop strategies, tactics, and the reform recommendations.
Right.
So how fast is the turnaround for the request? Because that will make an impact.
Well, hopefully, depending on the request, I mean, as quick as possible. So I can't tell you exactly how quick it will be. I don't have control over that, but I think that the staff that we're working with is committed to getting information back quickly. I think that there's a lot of information that they're sharing on the Google Drive already for people to participate. So if you have timeline problems, then Sandra and I can go right to the mic right there. Sandra and I can help with that. Greg?
Also, is it possible you can identify the people talking?
Can you repeat?
Can you identify the people that are talking at the mic?
Oh, yes. When you come to the mic, state your name.
Is it my turn?
Yep.
Okay.
You're up.
Just to clarify, that dog was not me. My name is Greg Garner. I just want to echo some of the comments that were made about if there's a possibility to extend the timeline from 90 days to 180 days. Gloria mentioned the request that's been made for copious amounts of information. I know that the subcommittees are going to be interdependent on one another. They're going to be, I know as a budget committee member, I'm going to want to know if we do identify funding sources somewhere that could go some different direction.
Come closer to the mic.
Where they're going to go. So if there's any chance of getting an extension from 90 days to 180 days, I just think we'd feel a lot less pressure and the product would be better than trying to rush it. I mean, we're 70 days out now from that time. And I just think if there's one thing we can do tonight is agree on at least asking the council. I don't know why the 90-day time frame was selected, but if we can push it out to 180 days, I think would be great. So
yeah, I have no problem doing that. Like I mentioned, I initially asked for 6 months, and then they came back with 90 and they tried to push it back to 45. So I was sharing with somebody earlier. I said, I totally agree with the time extension, and we can certainly make a formal request as a commission now that we've all come together. I suggested that from the beginning, but the council was trying to go back to 45 days. So, they had a different idea of this work, I think.
Well, I think I can't speak for the entire commission, but just the ones that have spoken tonight all feel the same way, and at least it's worth the effort.
Yeah.
To see
I said we would do it. Yeah.
Because I'm guessing, I'm hoping, I should say, that all the elected officials in the city have a desire for the outcome of this commission to be something special that's going to last for a long time, and to give us 70 days is just not enough. So
no, like I said, I wholeheartedly agree, and I said that Sandra and I think we'll work on putting a draft together and seeing if folks would agree on that. At least you put out a time frame, because that's good. But I wholeheartedly agree with more time. Luisa Medina.
Okay, yes. First off, let me start by endorsing the call for a longer period of time for this commission to extend its work out to. And 6 months is probably still too short, but I would endorse those who have called for that. And I'm sure that there are others on the commission who feel likewise. I want to come back to the issue of subcommittees and then the committee chairs meeting. So starting first with the subcommittee piece, will those be also open for the public to view and listen in? Will that be made available?
We talked about that last week, and we actually left it up to the subcommittee. So my recommendation, we didn't prescribe it in the bylaws, but we did.
And I was one of the persons that asked that question. And I believe
we talked about it, and I think that where we ended was the subcommittees themselves can make the decision to be open to the public. I committed to all the general commission meetings that be open to the public, but the subcommittees will make that decision inside the individual committees.
Well, I think for the purposes of transparency and keeping the community informed, and again, in an attempt to regain their trust in what we're about as a body and as individual committee members as well, it would behoove us to find a way to make that happen. And I would hope the commission would endorse that. Secondly, is the meeting of the committee chairs with you and Sandra. Same question, is that going to be open? Will we have an opportunity to listen in on the discussions and learn as well. Somebody said we're 70 days out already. And so it looks like next Monday, there'd be a meeting of the subcommittees who still have to select a chair to go. And so I would, again, ask that subcommittees and the meeting of the committee chairs be open so that we can hear firsthand as well the discussion that's taking place in any direction that would be coming back.
To that at all. I don't think, Sandra, unless I don't have any problem with that, with making that committee, the subcommittee meeting with the chairs. Can you go to the mic?
Hi, all. Sandra Celedon. I think what I would suggest instead of stacking meetings on top of meetings is one of the original discussion points was to maybe having the subcommittees meet one Monday and then the entire commission meet the following Monday. So that way we're alternating. We're still meeting every Monday, but we're alternating meetings so that the subcommittees are providing updates to the entire commission the following Monday. And so that was one way that I think we can maybe cut out one meeting so that the subcommissions are come prepared to provide what they worked on the previous week. So that was just one suggestion that I think would maybe help alleviate all of our calendars, because I do recognize that we're all going to have to do a lot of work outside of just even the Monday meetings. So that's just something that I would suggest.
And I think you and I talked a lot about that, Sandra. I think that if we actually are granted an extension, that actually makes a lot of sense to do it that way. One of the reasons we wanted to do a number of meetings in a row is to actually give the subcommittees time to have something to report and get some momentum. But if we're going to ask for more time. I'm glad the commission feels that way. I think if we're granted more time, that particular profile makes a lot of sense, because we can just kind of march down that path. Pastor Kreiner.
Thank you, Brother Chair. Well, technically, what I was going to say, Greg already said it. Gloria just backed it. I'll say this: I'm in total favor of more time for this reason. If we've ever played on a team, there has to be time to develop synergy amongst the team members. And I think part of the reason why, in my opinion, it doesn't seem like we are going to make the moves that we need to, because there's a lack of synergy. There's a lack of trust even within each other. As a result of that, we need to have at least one session, Brother Chair, to do almost a kind of a get to know kind of period with each other before we even start talking about the subcommittee and who those chairpersons are on that subcommittee, because those kind of serve, in my opinion, almost as the captains of the teams, right? And so if we had more time to kind of take our time to kind of get to know the individuals who are even a part of this team, then to figure out what our subcommittees would look like, I think in the long run, we can come out with an amazing thing that could transform our city instead of a rush kind of deal. I think that puts you at a disadvantage because you become the face of this deal as the chair. You're the one that's going to be taking a lot of the blows. That's probably not the fairest. But if we take our time, we can end up relaxing the way Brother Bob Mitchell right now is as he lit that pipe. We can all, he did it right on Zoom so everybody can see it. And then pulled it away and now he's about to blow the puff of smoke out because he's relaxed. And I think that's the only, I nominate him to be one of the subcommittee chairs as a preacher. But I think we should take our time with it. And if you need help, letting our council know that you have a lot of people, I believe, that's on this team that is saying, we would rather take our time to get to know one another so that we can have an actual good detailed sessions about what needs to happen. Otherwise, in 3 months 2 months from now, right, Gloria, we're going to be back in the same position and people are not going to have the trust that they're going to have in a month from now.
I wholeheartedly agree. Adrian Jones.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Chair. So just really quick back to, there's been a lot of focus on, of course, the community outreach, which we all know is going to drive this. And right now, I think while we are working on trying to figure out the best way to get to our community, I'm kind of old school, and I would like to see us just do a open survey of suggestions from the public. Maybe maybe we can open it up for 7 days and just raw suggestions from the public, what they are looking for in police, and just to get the ball rolling, just to, I don't know how we would feel that information and how we would, but I feel like we can start looking at trends or things that make sense, or that more than one person or more than 100 people are saying, and just look at what's going on and just get the raw feelings from the community for a week or so at the minimum, while we're trying to figure out a more strategic way to do the outreach. That would be my suggestion.
All right. Well, duly noted. Duly noted. Gloria Hernandez.
I'm sorry, I thought I lowered it again.
All right. Crescente.
Yeah, so I think there's a few things that are coming up for me. I think definitely just like echoing what folks have already mentioned, just on the extension of time, because just like the way the process was laid out today, it just feels very like rushed and not really thinking about the most marginalized community, right? So even thinking about how we do just like community outreach, right? Thinking about like folks that can't read or write, right? Thinking about folks that speak that are not like monolingual speakers, that are not English speakers. I definitely do like the suggestion that Sandra brought forward, just on like one of the meetings being for kind of like the core folks, right? Like the chairs and the chair and vice chair, and then the other time just getting that kind of like that full commission time. Just because like the initial proposal of like we won't be meeting until 3 weeks, it just feels like there will be also just like a lack of connection, even if that lack of connection won't happen with like the chairs of the committees, but it'll definitely happen with the commission overall. So I think that's a little concerning to me. And let's see. Yeah, so I think those were just like the main points. Like I really want us to really think about like who are we doing this process for, right? Like I know for me, I'm here for undocumented folks, right? I'm here for Korean trans folks. I'm here for Black folks. I'm here for a community that has constantly been like harassed and just like policed by our local police department. So I think I just want us to center our roles in this commission on that. So those were all my thoughts. Thank you.
So let me just say this really quick. So I think that we've said that we're gonna ask the council for more time. I think that we're gonna do that. And I just want to say that while I advocated for that even before the commission started, all of us knew when we came here that we were on a 90-day commitment. So I just want to, I don't want us to act shocked that all of a sudden we have 90 days. We all knew that when we signed up, but I am going to work with Sandra, draft a letter and ask for more time. But we are going to be mindful that the council made it very clear from the outset of what the expectations were of this committee. And we all knew that when we accepted the appointments. So just be mindful of that as well. So we'll cause I'm preparing you all for that, because the wording of the letters is going to be with us knowing with the expectation of 90 days. So again, I think that we're all, I think that we all are, for the most part, and although I haven't heard from a majority of you all, I can feel that there's a consensus around an extension of time, and we'll work on that. So, however, as I have said a number of times, This process is driven by the Fresno City Council. They may say no. And so I just want us to be, I want us to be understanding that we will ask, but it is not by any stretch of the imagination a guaranteed thing that we will get more time. So in saying that, the recommendations as far as the subcommittee tasks, timelines, and expectations were built off of a 90-day model. So I hear some consternation about the model. Just understand that it was built on a 90-day model. Okay, so that's why we did that. We're going to work to see if we can get some more time. If we get more time, it definitely allows us to adjust the model because we're not as rushed. I hear that loud and clear. So I just want us to be able to, I want you all to know that we get it and we will do that. I don't want to belabor the point necessarily about more time because we're in agreement. So when we agree, I want us to agree and move on to the next thing. So Brandon.
So question, it sounds like obviously time is an issue, but my point is, can we take a poll as commissioners if we are willing to meet more than just that once a week? If we're limited to the time we have and the council won't budge, which you've indicated it might be a long shot, could we take a census to see if we can meet more than that? Obviously we're busy, but with the importance of this and we all want to make an impact in the community, if we had to meet twice a week or so, would we be able to do so?
You know, Brandon, it's not a bad idea, but here's the problem. So what if it's like, and I'm just being dramatic here, literally, what if it's like 51-49? 51% of you can meet twice more than, once a week, and 49 of you can't. What does that do to the work of the commission? What does that do to participation? A number of you asked me about the expectations of the time commitment when you signed up. And I told you what my initial expectation was. And while I totally agree that we have to be flexible, and we are going to be as flexible as we can, a number of people were worried about the time commitment because a lot of people are busy. So I could see a scenario where a majority of people can meet more than once a week, but then a substantial minority might not be able to meet once a week, which means they can't participate on the subcommittees, or maybe they miss a general commission meeting. And the idea is to get as much participation as possible. So, I just want to offer that as the other side of that. It is really about finding the best model that allows for the majority of the commission to participate in this process and be able to provide some insight. So, Gloria.
Just a peace offering. Let's have the subcommittees meet 2 weeks and then report, the chair will report back to the commission, the big commission, on the 3rd week. This gives us 2 weeks to work. But I think like adding another meeting for the chairs and the vice chair it's just too much. This way it's open and it's transparent. Everybody hears what's going on between the committees, and then we move on.
I don't have any. So yes, and Gloria, thank you for that. I definitely understand the spirit in which you offered that, and I appreciate that. And I don't have a problem with that. I just want to let you all, a little insight into the idea was because we are on a condensed time frame. I didn't see an enormous amount of value by having, the subcommittee, after their first meeting, they meet with the general committee again, the general commission, when there won't be a whole lot to report. Now, I hear what you're saying after 2 meetings. I totally hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that. I mean, and I'm open to that, but I just wanted to give you guys at least the insight as to why. I didn't want us wasting our times in meetings. A lot of us are very, very busy. And so that was the idea. So,
but it would still be on Mondays. It would still be on Mondays, so no big deal.
I'm in agreement with you, Gloria. I just want to know. I'm in agreement with what you're saying. I mean, so yeah, I think it's a good suggestion. I just was trying to, and I haven't completely, I'm trying to be flexible, but I at least want you to know the thought process behind, why we made that suggestion. Louisa.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I muted? Okay.
No, you're good.
Okay, so I wanted to endorse, I think it was Sandra or somebody earlier who was talking about every other meeting. I can endorse what Gloria just put out on the table as well. But I wanted to come back, Mr. Chairman, to a comment that you made about the time frame and the council, and we all knew the timeline that we were working under. And I think we all agreed that it would require quite a bit of effort on our part to reach that. But you spoke about that the model was based on the 90 days. Well, you will recall that the model has been changed. The original model talked about a working group made up of 12 people. That is now changed to 4 subcommittees. And the need for these subcommittees to have information available to them as quickly as possible. And I'm hoping that that does occur. But I could also see where there would be perhaps a delay in getting some of the information so that as a subcommittee member, we can all make informed decisions. So the model has changed, and I think that's an argument in and of itself, along with what the sentiment is here from the commission members also, to go back and to justify an extension of time here because the model has changed. The other piece that I just want, this is going to be very serious work. You started off this meeting with encouraging us to take a long-term view of the work here and the benefit of the work here. To get there, we can't do that in 90 days when things are evolving as we're working. And I think that is good. I also want to endorse the comments it made about cohesiveness and building trust, even among the commission members themselves.
Well, just a quick response. I think I was real clear last week when we adopted the bylaws that the working group was really meant to be a placeholder for subcommittees. So the model hasn't really changed. It was defined after we had the first meeting, but it was always meant to be subcommittee work in this. So I endorse the effort for more time, and I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to ask the council through a letter that we all support for more time. I think that we have we will frame the best argument in that sense to do that. So, you know,
I don't want to debate you whether the model has changed or not. The model was of the working group was in the bylaws, and then
that
the
was
ultimately a change. I think we can.
It's not a debate. It's just that was a draft. So, you know,
it was also what was originally proposed to commissioners in order to consent to the process. So there.
Ashley, I appreciate that. I really want people to raise their hands if they got to talk. D'Angelique.
Hi, I just wanted to ask about the agenda since we know that we're going to write a letter to the city council. I'm just wondering with the subcommittees, if we'll be taking the time during this meeting to meet to decide when we'll be having a standard meeting, or if that's something that's supposed to happen out of house.
You know, subcommittees can. I mean, what we tried to do, I think all the information for the subcommittees is posted. And you have each other's information. If someone wants to start an email thread to just see how soon the subcommittees can meet. If they wanted to meet after this meeting, that would be. I'm not 100% sure that can happen, but hopefully the subcommittees can meet very soon. This would be the week that, unfortunately, we would need them to meet twice this week. We would have to have this general meeting and then have another meeting for next Monday. So that would be 2 meetings this week, but the idea wasn't to keep a meeting twice a week. But yes, if the subcommittees can meet this week and make some decisions, that would be great.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for clarifying. I think I was under the assumption that we would be doing breakout sessions today, so that's my bad. But email chain makes sense. I think a follow-up question, I guess to just try to identify a happy medium. If in the letter that we do submit to the city council, if we can try to figure out a way to just incorporate language like just recognizing the close of the budget that's happening, which is why we have the original deadline we have, which I know we talked about at previous meetings. So just let them know that that's something that we are aware of as commissioners, and just once again amplifying the messages that we're getting from our community members and that we're getting from the community members represented here on this commission, that this is going to take longer than 90 days, which I feel everybody is aware of, but it's always better to have it in writing, which I feel might be the takeaway message from what we're all trying to say.
Okay, well, duly noted. Thank you. Gloria, is your hand still raised, or was that from the last time? Is that a new raise?
Last time.
Okay. For some reason, they don't get yours off of there. Okay. So the last item under the subcommittee tasks was we wanted to make sure that by the next regular commission meeting, the subcommittee had developed a work plan. You know, we'll send out some guidance on that tonight. Sandra and I maybe circle up after the meeting, and I wholeheartedly endorse Gloria's idea of just taking 2 meetings instead of 3. If there's that seems like, you know, people want to connect more, I don't have any issue with that. And then after that second meeting, the general commission, that subcommittee would be responsible for developing a work plan at the next regular commission meeting. So next, since I don't see anyone hands raised, next we have on our agenda the legislative update. So I think that the Doug, did we have somebody from the city manager's office that was doing that? Who do we have?
Oliver's, can you hear me? It's Bruce Rudd.
Oh yeah. Oh, there you go, Bruce. Yeah.
So I believe Angie Minetti, who is one of the lobbyists that works for the city, is in the meeting. So you just need to hear it.
Okay, perfect. I see it right here. And just so the folks know that the idea of this was, we thought it might be a good idea to just get a kind of a baseline of what was happening around the state as far as public safety reform, some of the bills that are maybe working its way through the legislature. This is literally just an information item, just so that we have a baseline of some stuff that's happening around the state. And we thought it would be good for the commission to know. So, you know, feel free to ask questions if you have them, but this is really more or less an informational item, and hopefully it informs some of our work. So Angie, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I will go ahead and get set up. So give me a moment. All right. Gavin, is the screen sharing working?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. All right. So thank you so much, everybody, for your attention on this matter. What we've done, so I'm a lobbyist at Campbell Strategy and Advocacy for the city. And what we've done here is compile what has happened on police reform policies. I know that there were some landmark legislation passed last year, and then also bills and proposals. So we've tried to provide every perspective possible on this, so that you have an idea of the statewide discussions that are informing statewide policy, and also some of the local policies that folks have been adopting. So I'll go ahead and get started. All right. So last year, Assemblymember Weber and Senator Caballero had introduced bills to modify use of force. I'm going to start with AB 392. This raised the bar for police to use deadly force from reasonable to only when necessary. So where feasible, prior to force, peace officers must make reasonable efforts to identify themselves as a peace officer, and warn that deadly force may be used. With SB 293, this created a requirement so that every law enforcement agency would have to create policies and maintain policies around use of force, de-escalation. There is training involved associated with implicit bias as well, and essentially minimizing any type of use of force in the field. And so these standards and policies should be established by January 1st, 2021. So that bill is still in process, and I know has been provided funding through the budget as well. In our next slide, we've got the hashtag 8Can'tWait campaign. And sorry, I need to, okay, there. And what we've, what this campaign has done is essentially created 8 policies and recommendations that have been, suggestions for across the nation. And I know that they are in the process, if you go to this website, they're in the process of comparing the progress that some of the local law enforcement agencies have been making in this space, and then also what other states have been doing. As far as, and so I'll go through, we've got the banning of chokeholds and strangleholds, requiring de-escalation, requiring warning before shooting, requiring exhausting all alternatives before shooting, duty to intervene, ban shooting at moving vehicles, requiring use of force continuum, and requiring comprehensive reporting. And so I think it's important to at least understand what folks in the advocacy sphere have been pushing for, because I think you'll start to see some of these themes surface as we talk about some of the proposed legislation and also some of the other approaches that folks are advocating for as well. On June 15th, Attorney General Javier Becerra had announced some local recommendations, including some state ones. And so you'll find in these local recommendations, these are all policy approaches that I think in some ways do mirror some of hashtag 8Can'tWait's campaign, but also has additional specification to this as well. And so you've got intervention. All agencies should have a policy requiring officers to intervene to stop another officer from using excessive force or unnecessary force, banning chokeholds or carotid restraints, de-escalation, proportionality. All agencies should provide express guidance on proportionality to ensure officers understand the relationship that should exist between the force they use and the threat presented in a particular situation. Verbal warnings, prohibiting discharging a firearm at moving vehicles, deadly force as a last resort, comprehensive reporting. And there is this additional piece on canine use. Agencies should discontinue the use of find and bite and hold techniques and instead implement find and bark or circle and bark techniques where canines are trained and deployed to alert by barking rather than biting a suspect as a first response. These are some of the local recommendations. And then these are the Attorney General's state recommendations, which would require legislation. The first, decertify officers for serious misconduct, including provisions requiring law enforcement agencies to complete investigations even after a peace officer leaves a department. Expands reviews of law enforcement policies and practices, requires policies and training on bias by proxy, which occurs when a person calls the police or makes false or ill-informed claims about individuals they are biased against. Place clear limits on crowd control techniques during protests and mass gatherings. Forbid the use of pepper spray against children in juvenile detention. And then re-examining the role of police in addressing homelessness and mental health crises. In the announcement the Attorney General made, he had indicated that there may be some legislation they're sponsoring. I spoke with a representative at the Attorney General's office, and at this point in time, they're only supporting one bill, which I will share later on in the presentation. And for now, they have not sponsored any legislation that is associated with these recommendations that we see. So law enforcement perspectives, in this time, we've been able to collect correspondence from the California Chiefs Association, and I've attached the link here. I felt like it wouldn't do them much justice if because it's incredibly lengthy. But essentially, there, I think we can see that there. Essentially, this is the Police Chiefs Association's platform to have California lead the way on, with respect to the nation and police use of force. If you look through, and I'm sure that we will be providing this slideshow and supporting materials as well to the commissioners. But if you look through, you'll find that their positions on use of force policies are very much supporting creating AB 392 and SB 230, the use of force bills from last year, as a nationwide standard. And there are some additions here which talk about supporting decertification, for example, but under very specific conditions, only for officers convicted with felonies, only for folks that are determined determined to have egregious misconduct, and ensuring that there is some sort of due process with the decertification. There is also support for disclosure of personnel files related to serious use of force resulting in death or bodily injury, sexual assault, and job-related dishonesty. You'll find that there are other policy recommendations to help support a more diverse candidate pool, to provide more mental health support and wellness for peace officers, and other training associated with implicit and racial biases as well. And so that's a document I think that will probably be informative as to, how some of their responses and reactions may be to the legislation that's been introduced. Another letter that I will open up for you is from the Peace Officers Research Association of California, PORAC. Again, this is also very much supportive of a national platform, a national policy on use of force, and using the legislation that California had trailblazed in this space with SB 230 and AB 392, establishing use of force only when necessary, and also through SB 230, establishing specific policies to ensure that there's training around an officer's duty to intercede, de-escalation, rendering medical aid, and proper use of force. So these are policies, and this is a little bit more broader, but again, policies that PORAC is very much in support of. And so again, we will see some of these reactions, I think, as the legislative session unravels in this space with bills. We will be able to sort of see how the Assembly and the Senate are able to negotiate some of these measures. All right. So police reform legislation, there are some bills that deal with sheriffs and CHP, but for the most part, I felt these bills were most relevant to the scope of the commission's work. And so you've got about 15 bills here, and I've organized them a little bit by subject matter later on in the presentation, so you can follow along easily. The next four bills very much touched on some of the provisions in the hashtag 8 Can't Wait campaign. And so we've got AB 1022, duty to intervene. This bill would require law enforcement policies to require officers to immediately report excessive force, to intercede when present or observing an officer using excessive force. I know that just as we start going through these bills, most of these bills that are in the that are assembly bills are going to be heard by the Senate Public Safety Committee July 28th. And so the process will be moving pretty quickly. And from what I understand from the Senate Public Safety Consultant, their deadline for letters of support and opposition is this Wednesday. They are waiting to hear from folks, but from what I understand is that some of the folks in the law enforcement community do have concerns with this bill. Again, though, a lot of the correspondence and actual position letters on these measures have not been officially submitted. So, we won't have an opportunity to discuss those issues today. AB 1196 by Assemblymember Gibson. This is a ban on chokeholds and strangleholds. This bill is supported by the Police Chiefs Association and also by the Attorney General. When Governor Newsom was interviewed on this topic, he did indicate that if there was to be a bill sent down to him that does ban these types of restraints, he would sign it. So I think we expect this bill to not have much complications as far as a passage to the governor's office. AB 1709 by Assemblymember Weber. This is deals with police use of force de-escalation, and it requires, and I would say that this bill touches on a few other pieces. It requires peace officers to control an incident through de-escalation. They've defined de-escalation as providing verbal warnings, tactical repositioning, and or using other non-law enforcement resources in the circumstance to help de-escalate the situation. There is a requirement for peace officers to render medical aid immediately or as soon as feasible. And the definition of feasible in this may be the point of debate. It's capable of being done or carried out without unreasonably increasing the risk to the officer or another person. And so these may be some legal terms that will have to be negotiated out. I do believe that the law enforcement community has indicated they do have concerns with this measure, and we'll be debating that out in committee. Reporting and transparency. AB 1299 by Assemblymember Salas would require a law enforcement agency to notify the commission on peace officer standards and training when a peace officer separates from employment, and also include any details around termination or resignation. So this is a way to essentially keep a record for a police officer. And I know that Assemblymember Salas had some issues with this in his district. AB 1314 by Assemblymember McCarty. This bill would require municipalities to post any settlements or judgments that have been paid out related to use of force cases. And Assemblymember McCarty has had these issues in his district coming from Sacramento, and is very much aware of what the city of Sacramento has had to pay out in these settlements with respect to the Stephon Clark case. And so given that these are funds that come from the general fund, the Assemblymember believes that this is something that the public should be aware of and taxpayers should be aware of. Police evaluation. And so now we're entering into the bills that don't deal very much in the subject matter of the hashtag 8Can'tWait campaign. These are legislative efforts that go a little bit more beyond, and I think, you know, address some of the issues that these members have been seeing in their districts and from their constituents. AB 846 would require during a psychological eval for peace officer training that there would be an evaluation or evaluation of bias against race, ethnicity, gender, nationality, religion, disability, or sexual orientation. SB 731, this bill deals with police decertification. Specifically, the bill would have the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training the ability and essentially the authority over a peace officer's certification. The conditions under which a peace officer could be decertified under this bill would include excessive force, sexual assault, making a false arrest, unprofessional conduct, and any act indicative of bad or moral character. Since this bill is a Senate bill, it is going to be heard in the Assembly Public Safety Committee. There isn't a date for that hearing just yet, but we'll go into timeframes at the end of the presentation so you get a sense of timing in the legislative process. Police records, AB 1599 by Assemblymember Cunningham allows for police records, police officer records to be subject to the Public Records Act if it deals with sexual assault. In contrast, SB 776 does the same with the exception of it essentially being subject to every use of force case. So every use of force case would be subject to disclosure. State oversight. AB 1506 by Assemblymember McCarty creates a division within the Department of Justice. And so this division within the Department of Justice would offer assistance to any local law enforcement agency and provide recommendations and provide technical assistance on their use of force policy. Emergency calls, AB 1550 prohibits and well, essentially permits civil action for individuals who are subjects of discriminatory emergency calls. SB 773, right now the bill and the language modifies the membership of the advisory board of the 911 Emergency Act. And so what they're trying to do here, and I imagine there will be amendments coming, is having these 911 calls related to mental health and to drug abuse or drug overdose transferred over to social service experts. But that language is not in print at the moment. Police use of force during protests. So AB 66 would prohibit rubber bullets and tear gas. They have during peaceful protests, this bill does carve out the use of pepper spray, so that would continue to be permitted. And AB 1652 would require law enforcement agencies to create a use of force policy around kettling or corralling during protests. SB 1220 by Senator Umberg would require any local law enforcement agency to keep records and keep records on law enforcement personnel and refer any of those records over to prosecuting agencies and by placing the officer's name on the Brady list. So this would establish a statewide standard for compliance with the Brady list, which is, at the moment, seems to be a patchwork in compliance. The California District Attorneys Association has sponsored this bill. So timing for the legislative process, we're currently in recess right now, both houses, and the legislature is scheduled to reconvene July 13th. For some of these bills, they do have a fiscal impact on the state, and so July 31st would be the last day for policy committees to report and hear the bills. August 7th, that policy committee deadline is for bills that are not fiscal. August 14th is the last day for the Appropriations Committee to meet and report these bills. And then from August 17th to the 31st, both houses will be meeting only for floor session, with the 31st being the last day to pass any legislation out of their respective house. September 30th would be the last day for the governor to sign or veto any bills. And that concludes our presentation.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Angie. If you can put the gallery view back up so I can see if there are any questions. Yes, Ephraim has his hand up.
Yeah, so my question, just a little background. So from my experience in the past, a lot of the times the police department tend to go against any community efforts to try to bring change. Recent examples, if you look at Advanced Peace, they opposed it because the community didn't let them put their hands on it. Measure P, they opposed it because the community didn't let them put their hands on it, right? So I'm wondering, is there a track record on where the police department stands on all of these bills that you presented on, and also the recommendations that have been made by Becerra and other entities across California?
Hi, Efren. Are you asking for if the Fresno City Police Department has?
Yeah, specifically Fresno Police Department.
I don't believe I've seen any actual correspondence from the Fresno Police Department on these matters. And even with the use of force bills from last year, most of the law enforcement associations at the statewide level had worked to negotiate with the advocates and with the members to sort of make progress in this space. And so to your point, I think in years before, there has been some difficulties getting both of these groups to come together in agreement. And in years, in more recent years, and I think with a lot of the incidents, a lot of the local incidents, there's been more productive discussions at the table, which is why we were able to even have bills like SB 230 and AB 392 from last year. But as of now, like I said, most of the law enforcement groups at the statewide level, at least, they haven't officially registered positions yet, but I imagine that in the coming week or so, we will have some of that correspondence available.
Adrian Jones.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Angie, for this. My question is about the hashtag 8 Can't Wait. From what I understand, those are 8 regulations that right now cities can make changes on without any sort of legislation. And I understand that the city of Fresno right now is only, our police department are only doing 2 of those things. Is there any movement on the other 6, or is that something that I guess this body may look at?
Yeah, Adrian, you're correct in that. You know, I think with any local entity, there is local authority to certainly enact any policies that the local city council may deem appropriate for that municipality. And so at this moment, I'm not aware of any other efforts, but, you know, to your point, that's certainly part of what I think this commission has been, you know, created to deliberate over, is exploring whether some of those are suitable for, you know, addressing some of the local concerns.
Hey, Oliver.
Yes.
I know I'm not supposed to comment, just an observer, but since I looked at the 8 can't wait, and I believe 7 of those are already implemented. The only one I believe is not implemented in Fresno PD, as well as most law enforcement agencies in California, is I believe there was one on continuum of force, was one of the 8. And I believe that's one that's been debated over the years in terms of why it's been done away with. And in essence, it was, you have to go through a series of force options before you use deadly force, even if an individual was presenting a immediate threat to your life. So that was the only one. I think the other 7 are implemented.
All right. Well, thank you, Angie, for a very comprehensive briefing. And just for the commission, you guys probably heard it. Angie mentioned that she'll make that available to us for review, so you can review some of these bills on your own time if you're interested. Thank you. All right. We will now we'll take a couple of questions and answers from questions from the public. I think we, Gavin, are we able to?
Oliver, you're going to want to use the Q&A, not the chat. The public can't use the chat functionality, but there is one question sitting there in the Q&A.
Okay, how do I do that? Or can someone,
click on the QA icon at the bottom.
Right, can someone pull that Q&A up for me so I can see what the question is? So this is from Cesar Casamayor. I'm going to read the question because I know maybe everyone can't see it. It says, listening to what some community members are saying, what would be the justification of not continuing this committee with so many unfinished information collected from the community? That's a great question. And because I know you're Cesar, I'm sorry for calling you Cesar. It's a great question. And you know, I've always maintained that my hope in this work is that it will be institutionalized, and it would not just be, you know, whether it's 90 days or 6 months. If we're able to get an extension, I'm hopeful that what comes out of this is a surviving committee that really continues the effort long after what we do here. If we do it right, then what we start is something that others will continue for the, in perpetuity, reviewing what we do as far as policing practices in this community, what our interactions with our residents are, measuring the outcomes that we want to have, long into the future. So you asked the perfect question, Cesar, and I hope that I hope we can get that. I certainly am hopeful that this commission will make a recommendation to the council. Gavin, is that the last question from the community?
There was another one from David, but somebody says they're going to answer it, or it was answered live. I didn't see it answer it live. David Taboo said, Ms. Caldeon, can you please explain your tweet regarding burn it down that you made a few weeks ago? What did you mean by that? It's directed to Ms. Saldon.
I'll go ahead and answer it. That was, David, a personal tweet. I'm here on my official capacity as Fresno Building Healthy Communities. I'm happy to have a personal conversation with you and explain a little bit about American history so that that tweet can be referenced accordingly. So happy to talk to you one-on-one during my off time.
Brother Chair, this is Pastor Cranner. Can I raise something, sir, please?
Pastor, can I get you to raise your hand in the
I'm sorry.
the chat room? Then I can acknowledge you. Okay, and I want to make sure we get all of the questions answered first. I think that's Gavin. Am I good with that? Was the last community question?
Yeah, I don't see any Q&As pending at this time.
Okay, and Pastor, I know you're ready to go, but Beva is ahead of you, so Beva, go right ahead.
So I guess my question is directly responding to that last asinine question that was made, because I'm hoping that you as a chair will help to control and ensure that the questions being directed to commissioners relate to the work of the commission and are not questions that are personal attacks on any one of us. So that's one.
Well, Bev, I appreciate that. And you probably noticed me trying to stop Sandra. I was going to do it, but she insisted on answering. So
no, I'm not in the room, so I didn't see that. So I appreciate that. But secondly, I do think it would be helpful to developing a productive culture on this commission, to have clarity about the etiquette and process. I don't know if you were following the chat, but Gavin seems to be very directive in how he wants us to respond on the chat. And I feel it would be more appropriate coming for you or the vice chair. For example, even raising our hand or lowering our hand seems to be an issue, whether we're responding to all panelists or to panelists or attendees. So things like that would just be helpful in order to know how to operate in a way that is productive. So I'm just offering that as a suggestion. It would be more helpful to come from you than per se Gavin. And I understand that he's helping you, but I just want to make sure that everybody is getting the same information in terms of how we are being expected to participate.
thank you. And I can't see the chat, Beva. And I did. I know that the chat's going on. I don't see any of the conversation in the chat. So I'll review it with Gavin and figure out what we can do. Pastor Kreiner.
Thank you, Brother Chair. Being a part of other commissions and being a part of things that Zoom has given us access to, sometimes is a negative because you don't know what a person is going to say when they hop on. And Sandra, I offer my love to you, sis, because you handled that very well, but you shouldn't have had to whatsoever. I don't care if it's GVY or whoever. This is not the place for that. So whoever's trying to, if you want to call me, you can, and I'll deal with you personally because we're trying to do something here. And for our co-chair to have to take a call like that is ridiculous. And I was wondering, Brother Chair, if maybe if we could set up something where it's simply the Q&A without folks being able to call in and address a question. That way those could be vetted and we don't have to take questions that are not related directly to what our purpose is at that particular moment. I don't know if that's possible, Brother Chair, but we really don't need any distractions, especially if we have a time limit in order to get stuff done.
No, thank you, Pastor. And I was going to answer for Sandra, but she wouldn't let me because I didn't think it was an appropriate question either. But I'm gonna have to review. Oh, Ashley, were you asking the question, Ashley? Okay, I have another Q&A up here. It says Fresno Police Chief George K. Hansen tried to reform the police department and instituted community-based policing and brought police close to the public that ever was eroded. How will this committee be different from that what was instituted in the past. I forgot. Can you put it back up? I just wanted to see who. Marshawn. Okay, thanks, Marshawn. That's a great question. And in our very first meeting as a commission, what we talked about was the ability to receive enormous input from our residents here in Fresno and really craft a policing strategy that responded to their needs. And I get the sense from this commission and all of the work and all the hours that they're putting in thus far that we're very committed to that. At least committed as far as we can go and making those recommendations. I would suggest that, I am hopeful that this committee will do work that the community is proud of. And I would hope that there would be a lot of pressure on the council, the Fresno City Council, to adopt the work that we put together in its totality, because I feel strongly that we will produce a work product that we're proud of. So that, Marshawn, is what I can tell you is our intent, to try to make sure that the policing strategy that we recommend is instituted by this city. So as Catherine Forbes, and she asks, how should the commission incorporate the pending legislation into its work? That is, some of the proposed legislation might be actions we want to adopt here, and that can be enacted without legislative directives. Does it make sense to adopt it here or write letters of support from the commission in support of the policy proposals? Catherine, that's another great question. I can tell you that the legislative update that we received from Angie today were all state proposals, if I have that right. And yes, if you have support for the proposals that were written, I would certainly encourage you to contact your assembly member and your state senator to register your support. I suspect that some of those recommendations this committee will support. I didn't get a chance to vet them all, but just some of them on the face seem like there's a lot of merit and value to them. So I suspect that if those pieces of legislation aren't already adopted prior to this work being complete, that we as a commission will probably take some positions that support that legislation. So that's a great question, and I anticipate we'll have the opportunity to do that. All right, those are all the questions we're going to take today in our Q&A. I'll go right ahead, Judge.
I was just wondering, in line with that, there's a lot of information that we'll have available to us from her presentation. It would seem to me that information might be instructive to the appropriate subcommittee. And if the subcommittee and then ultimately this commission like those proposals, they could be incorporated in our recommendation. We don't have to wait for Sacramento to do what we think is appropriate. So if some of those are good ideas with the research behind them, we can piggyback on that and do it ourselves.
Absolutely. No, for sure. My Tao.
I'm sorry, we're still in the legislative portion of the agenda, but I wanted to just double check if we're closing out of the meeting. Then myself, Efrain, and Grisanti had questions from the last agenda item around the subcommittee that we feel like that wasn't fully answered. So I just want to make sure that we flag that if you're closing up the meeting. But if not, then if we can come back to that later.
Maya, you can go ahead and ask the question, because we really moved into the Q&A with the public. So I just closed that. So I'm going to reopen it for commission members to close down the meeting with any final last thoughts. So if you wanted to get some clarity on something, we can do that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we just wanted to clarify and confirm the final process that was selected for subcommittee meetings schedules and or also the subcommittee chair meetings and process.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I'm glad you mentioned that. Sandra and I chatted about it, and I mentioned that when Gloria had made a suggestion of the subcommittees having 2 meetings instead of 3, or we met again, that I was perfectly fine with that. I thought it was, it keeps in line with the idea of, what we had initially, but at the same time, it was a somewhat of a compromise to Can everyone mute their mic? It was also, I think, somewhat of a compromise in order to increase the number of general commission meetings. So that was going to be the final recommendation from my standpoint. And I think Sandra would probably agree with that. Yeah. Unless there are objections that from that, that's where we were going to land. Louisa?
I thought I got the answer, but you lost me. So it is every 2 weeks, then back to my question is the same as the previous. Every 2 weeks, subcommittee, next week, the following week, then back to a full commission on the 3rd week?
Yes.
Is that okay? All right, thank you.
D'Angelique?
Hi, I was just wondering, just for future reference in at least this meeting for clarity, if we could, when just switching between agenda items, if we could make a motion on the floor or something just to make it like official so everybody's aware, because I feel like there was just a few times of confusion today. Even if it's not like complete formal Robert's rules, just like some sort of process to officially signal that we're moving forward would be helpful, with acknowledgement from the full commission, I mean.
Okay, I'll make it clear when we're moving from, if I haven't been clear, I'll make it clear that we're moving from one agenda item to the next. Rod?
Yeah, can you hear me, Oliver?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I was just wondering. So after we do our process and we give you guys our recommendations, you said you have to take them over to the city council members. Will we be a part of that process, or is that going to be something just closed doors to just the executive board and the city council members?
So what we are going to do, Rod, is we are going to put together a series of recommendations that we are going to present to the Fresno City Council for adoption. We're going to ask them to adopt our recommendations. It will then be up to them to make that decision. I suspect that we will do everything in our power as a commission to encourage them to adopt what we recommend. But ultimately, the decision is theirs. It is not ours. We aren't empowered to make policy decisions. Council is, but we will do everything that we can in order to, get them to adopt what we recommend.
Okay, yeah, my question was, the commission, as commissioners, we won't have no part in that process though, correct?
Well, we do. This commission is set up to make those recommendations. So we have a big part of it.
All right, thanks.
No problem. All right, so I think we have cleared off all of our questions. Okay. CSR asks, how does given 90 days to create recommendations allow for accountability, engagement, and commitment to better our police department? How are we measuring our best democratic practices? Is this committee not aiming to improve our engagement approach with the community? Well, CSR, we had a pretty robust discussion about that. And Gavin, we're closing public comment at this point. But we had a pretty robust discussion about that. And the city council said that, and I don't want to answer for their wisdom in how they selected 90 days. I personally argued for a longer time frame. They wanted 45 days instead of 90. So in some cases, I was happy that the commission was able to get 90 days. So you would have to really ask the Fresno City Council what their thought was in the 90-day timeline. Tonight, though, the commission did, in consensus, seem to agree that we want to ask for a longer time horizon in order to do the work I can't tell you whether or not they are going to support the request because they were, they were adamant about the 90 days, but maybe after a couple of weeks of us working and we do our best to describe to them what, our needs, that they will meet that. So we'll see what we can do. But that is a question that I think the large majority of the commission is supporting, is asking for a time extension. All right, we are approaching 2.5 hours. I am going to, I see no more hands raised or additional hands. So I thank you all for hanging in here tonight. We'll send out our minutes this week, and we'll send out further guidance on our subcommittees based on the agreement that we had here tonight. All right, thank
I
you.
have a question. It's Gloria.
Oh, Gloria.
Yeah, I missed something. Okay, so we're back to 2 meetings, subcommittee meetings, and then back to the original big commission, right?
It was your suggestion, Gloria, that we adopt it.
Okay, so we dropped the baby chair meeting, right? The chairs meet with the vice and all that. We dropped that.
I actually think we should do it, but if people don't want to, I'm not going to force them. Only we did that was to seek continuity, to make sure there weren't.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, the only reason we did that was to make sure that we didn't have large gaps. So with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. It is 7:24, and we will see you all in 3 weeks.